quorum and All-American County. I remember the expression that we are not defined by our losses, and we've had the roaring 20s begin in a rather fascinating way with this tornado, and we thank God that nobody was hurt. As it summed up in the Chronicle newspaper this morning, I think we're stronger when we act together, and the county indeed has done that. That's the spirit of community that we have. We lost a high school, but no lives, and we will rebuild, and we will take care of those children and their families. And as it says in Mark chapter 4, Jesus rebuked the storm, and we were spared significant damage to the lives and property of the people around that school. But we also, during the holidays, lost a great man. We lost Gene Falkenberry, and his legacy persisted on Sunday for those of you who are out there. And you watch the men and women that he had trained and the cooperation that he had garnered with other agencies, like our good Sheriff Lee, thank you for being here today, and the school district all pulling together. It was a great moment for our county, and it remains that way, and tomorrow we'll have school for those children. And in remembrance of him, it was as if Gene was present. The first person on the scene at midnight that morning in that rain was a volunteer fireman, one of Gene's men, Brandon Price, a volunteer, a fireman, one of Gene's men. He would be proud, and I hope he'll be proud of us in the year ahead. And I ask you to join me in a moment of silence in memory of our great friend that we've lost. Amen. Amen. And with that, I will ask Mr. Connell to lead us into the new year with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, please forgive us of our sins and help us do what's right. Please have mercy upon us as we move into 2020. May all of our activities be pleasing unto Thee. Father, please bless those who've been impacted by the property damage that came to North Central High School. Please bless the students, families, and school district employees and administrators to be organized and able to carry out the purposes of education effectively. Please bless the family of Gene Falkenberry. We miss him and love him, and we pray that Thou will lift them up, help them through this challenging and tough time. And we pray that his legacy may live on through all those that he's taught and impacted. As always, we pray for wisdom and charity as we make decisions here in these council chambers for the benefit of Kershaw County. Please bless our great nation. Please bless our military and those that serve in law enforcement and put themselves in harm's way, all those who are emergency responders. Please bless and watch over our family members and guide us. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Connell. We move now to public comments. Mr. DeBose, can you tell us how many we have signed up?
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, 7 people signed up, so they'll get a little over 4 minutes each. The first person signed up is Penry Gustafson.
And as Ms. Gustafson comes up, I would remind you it's an opportunity for members of the public to share information with council, not a time for debate or the exchange of question and answers. I ask you also to keep your comments within the purpose of this body and maintain the decorum and the serious businesses that we carry forward here on behalf of the people. Madam, please.
Thank you. I'm Penry Gustafson, and tonight I just wanted to share some thoughts regarding the disturbed by the trends that are happening across the country in regard to Second Amendment rights discussions, firearms, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the Second Amendment was written very brilliantly, and I think it still stands today. But this, no offense to anyone here, but this Democratic push to ban handguns has been distressing to me. Has come forward. District of Columbia versus Heller, 2008. A lot of us are familiar with this Supreme Court proclamation of the Second Amendment, which actually established an individual right to possess firearms. And it struck down the DC handgun ban. And then the Second Amendment was further strengthened with the Supreme Court rulings in 2010 with the decision of McDonald versus City of Chicago. But again, seizing guns and creating special local ordinances and all, I just would not have guessed we would be there, but we are there today. I do not agree with a collective rights theory that citizens don't have an individual right to possess guns, and I don't believe governmental bodies should be having the authority to regulate firearms. I think that should be up to our states and up to our local leaders. And all those people who were made fun of after Obama was elected, when they went out and bought their firearms and their ammo, everybody mocked them. I remember this very clearly. Went up through the roof, they got made fun of. But it turns out complete gun control has been part of this Democratic agenda for decades. They were not paranoid. They were just observant. So I think we do need bolder voices, stronger voices on every level to stand up for our individual rights and our liberties. I think for the safety of every citizen, we need to monitor and speak out against any legislation that might support a gun registry. I don't know, that's a state and federal thing, but I think things do trickle down to local levels. I don't support a gun registry. And while I'm here, I'm just going to add a gun-free zone. I'm against gun-free zones because I think they target innocent lives by just providing a roadmap for the criminals out there. Just puts a big target on their backs. So I know there's a lot of discussion and a lot of, I hope this will be a good public discourse. We can continue this as an open discussion and not be combative and divisive about this. But I do support the resolution tonight because I think that's what we need to do. We need to stand up for Second Amendment rights because they're getting shot down at every level, everywhere. And we've got to be strong and support them. And I think this, again, years ago, this wouldn't have been necessary. It'd be a waste of time, but not today. I think today it's a good day to do it. Thank you so much for all of your work. Happy New Year.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. DeBose.
Second person that signed up is Bruce Bretschlitz.
Brucci.
Yes, sir. It's three.
I can't read your writing.
Yeah, I was kind of scribbling.
All right, Mr. Brucci, please.
Hey, I'm Bruce Brucci from West Columbia, and I felt this was so important to drive over and offer support and pat you guys on the back for what you're doing. And as I stand here tonight, I want to share some good news. In Virginia, which we're all aware of, the gun confiscation was just stopped because of the pro-gun crowd that showed up at the legislature. You guys are the first council in the county to take a proactive step to protect the Second Amendment. Because here's the thing that's so good about what y'all are doing. Crooks will not follow the rules. So by turning law-abiding citizens into criminals, you have made your county and our state less safe. I commend you. I thank you, Councilman Jones. Thank you for leading with this. And I'm glad we are breaking out the Second Amendment and standing with it. You know, I know we all stand and agree with the Constitution, but what's under attack right now is the Second Amendment. I think it's very important that we stay with that and on that theme. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, sir. Mr. DeBose.
The third person signed up is Sheriff Lee Bone.
All right, Sheriff.
I'm also up here thanking our county council. This is a good step, protecting our Second Amendment rights. I'm all for you. I support it 100%. Also want to talk about our checks and balances. Even if we didn't have a council that was supportive of our Second Amendment, and you were to come up with some kind of ordinance that violate the Second Amendment, I would not enforce it. So that works, it kind of works both ways. We are glad to have a council that supports the Second Amendment and a sheriff that supports it. That's a win-win for Kershaw County. I want to thank every one of you for it.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. Mr. Bose, thank you.
Fourth person that signed up is Justin Jones.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's been a while since I've spoke, and it's good to see all of you again. I had a somewhat more eloquent speaking notes drafted, but I'm going to sum it up with this. Don't give up your guns. Period. Dot. Anybody who asks you to give up your guns is planning to do something to you that you will wish you had kept them for. Put more succinctly, those who beat their swords into plowshares end up plowing for those who kept their swords. And the Second Amendment is never more than just a few council members away from being stripped from us. I've had a council member tell me basically that he doesn't have to convince me if he convinces himself. And that's all it takes. All it takes is 4 of you to convince yourselves that I do not have this right to my guns, and you will vote to try to take them away from me. And then we're going to fight. And that's period. That's the end of the story right there. I hope it never comes to that. And I hope the fact that the Second Amendment did not get created in the 1700s, but stems all the way back to the Middle Ages and English common law, would be enough to convince us that the traditions and collected wisdom of our ancestors has shown us that an armed populace is a peaceful populace and a protected populace. There's a mantra I like to live by, and I heard it only recently, but it really stuck with me. And it goes something similar to this. Strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and hard times create strong men. And then oftentimes we find that good times and these weak men forget how important the rights that the strong men gave us are to our future prosperity. In conclusion, I'd like to say the second is not up for debate. It is not quibbling over semantics because our comma is here or our comma is there. The militia is us. It is us. It is all of us. This is the organized and the unorganized militia. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They do not understand how that could be confusing, but apparently it is to some. And if you are afraid of guns, I've got no issue with you. You don't have to have them. But I'm not afraid of them. And I know how useful they can be for our protection. And it is not about hunting. It is always about personal protection. It has been about having weapons on par with those that are in common military usage. Not muskets, nothing archaic, not English longbows. Common military usage. Thank you for your time, and I support you in this measure.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. DeBose.
The fifth person that signed up, and the next person is Alan Cobb.
Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to start out, I also support Second Amendment resolution. We got to protect our gun rights. Next thing I want to talk about this evening is good things. I understand we have custom profiling coming to the county, 70 new jobs, $1.7 million investment, and I keep hearing some good things about the water walk, the river walk rather. That's coming along pretty good. With that being said, let me go on to some other things I want to talk about. One is starting at 5:30. Gentlemen, working men and women have a hard time getting there at 5:30. Most people work to 5. It's kind of hard to go home, do whatever it is you got to do, get ready, come to this meeting and be here by 5:30, especially if you want to speak. If you want to speak, you really need to be here a few minutes early, correct? So I'd really like to see this bumped on up to 6 o'clock so we can get the working men and women Kershaw County that want to say The pond out there is not for, well, like Walmart has to build a pond for the water to run off of all the concrete. The school had to build a pond. Well, we've got a lot of industry here, don't get me wrong. But when are we going to get another investor, something big, something that pays really good? Continental Tire would have been a good opportunity for Kershaw County. And for some reason, we didn't even have a crack at it. What are we doing wrong? We got to have a better deal. Better deal. We got work on better deals. Wasteful spending is pretty much what I'm hitting at. It started out, people didn't like it. They thought it was a bad deal. Well, I talked about how valuable another section of land not far.
Part of our Constitution. I hope that in future, this same support that you're showing for the Second Amendment will also
words that hangs up some discussions of it is regular. The book Second Amendment. We're supposed to be well practiced so that we show up on time if anybody calls us out, and we don't do that. It's a shame. There have been some militias. Right before the Murrah building was blown up, there were militias here in South Carolina and locally. I knew some of the people. I never